Okay.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Voice of Crypto. And we have with us a really special guest today. We have Jon from Demetra Blockchain. And like always, we're going to be talking about a lot of exciting things that are happening in Web3. But before all of that, welcome, Jon. Welcome to Voice of Crypto's podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here today. Really
It's a
pleased.
pleasure.
Yeah.
So, if you could just give a little bit of roundup about what you're doing in the space currently, what all you're doing with Demetra, and how did you make this switch from Web 2 to Web 3, assuming that you were before Web 3, you did something else. So, what was the switch that sort of, when it ticked you, made the switch? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so Demetra has been around a couple years now. We started in 2021 and built a blockchain based agriculture system. We work with farming cooperatives and governments around the world. And when we started, really, the first way to reach the farmers is through a mobile app. And we use the mobile app. We connected to blockchain through the cloud and built a lot of functionality, a lot of different features for farmers, right from planting their crops and preparing their fields all the way through marketing their crops and complying with regulations. As we built some of those tools, we saw that some of them would be a great Web3 fit. And and so we have a number of tools that are available on Web3. We still have tools that are available in a Web2 format. So we are a bit of a hybrid.
So you've managed to sort of make tools for Web 2 and Web 3, which does make sense for any, which is like the dream for any and every Web 3 entrepreneur to be catering to both the Web 2 and the Web 3 crowds. But what did you do before Demetra? And I think what was the idea that came into your mind before the inception of Demetra blockchain? Were there any gaps in the space that you really wanted to fill with this particular enterprise? And how do you go about the inception of the blockchain?
So I had a custom system design company, and we built a lot of systems, and we worked in a lot of places in supply chains, and essentially working in supply chains, we learn around how the food moves, how we can track that, um, how retail works, and how various industries work around the world. And and as we did that, we had a number of clients who were looking at how do they connect with farmers. Farmers tend to be the start of the supply chain in the food and agriculture space, and there was a big gap there. Very few corporations, even today, have a real connection with the farmers. And there's only a few apps available that connect the farmers all the way to industry. Um, One of the first projects we did was in Africa, and it was to bring on board 1 million farmers. And the goal was just identity, identify the farmers, where they are, what they're doing, as part of a government program. And that program helped get them funding to continue to expand their work. So that was the first one. And then as I went to Africa, to DRC, to a big tech conference. While I was there, I got to meet lots of different people and understand some of the challenges that they have, and really started to form a vision for what Demetra was in my mind. And that was some of the stuff we've already done, connecting corporations, and how do we connect that back to a farmer or back to a farming cooperative. And so there's been many evolutions of that. We have full traceability in our system, right from the seed that the farmer plants in the ground all the way to the product that is in the store or at a wholesaler or manufacturer. And that was the first piece. And then we started adding functionality. We would get feedback from farmers and corporations on different gaps that they have, and they're not collecting the right data in order to achieve whatever their goal is. And we continually added features to help them solve some of those problems. So it's been an interesting journey over the last couple of years.
Absolutely. And how big is the ag tech sector per se? And according to you, what are some of the top geographies that, or maybe the top emerging geographies when we talk about ag tech?
Yeah, so ag tech and food tech is, other than pure finances, is as big as they come. It's trillions of dollars, and there's a lot of different organizations that put different numbers out there. $8 trillion. Everybody in the world eats. Almost all of the food comes from agriculture, and so it's a very, very big market. We have decided to work primarily in developing regions, just to close some gaps that exist in the marketplace. So we do a lot of work in Latin and Central America, Asia, and Africa. Although we do some work in North America and Europe, we're primarily focused on farms in those three big continents.
And since our topic of discussion today is mastering AI and ML in Web3, I think I would really like to understand how AI and machine learning sort of ties up ag tech and Web3, because these are, I wouldn't say these are separate technologies, but I am guessing that at Demetra, you guys are bringing all of these together and working in the ag tech space. How does that happen from a development point of view?
Well, so if you look at what we're doing, we're collecting data from farmers and we're feeding them back information to help them make better decisions. So we start with agronomy, and a farmer might tell us about their soil, might tell us about the chemistry of their soil, the crops that they want to grow. And then we collect data about weather and climate and different topographical information that various universities and organizations have studied. We pull all that together, and machine learning is a great fit to analyze that, because you're looking at big data with a lot of variables, and that helps produce better results on the ground to guide farmers on what they need to do, or guide cooperatives in what they need to do in order to help their business. So machine learning really fits one in that area. The second area that we do a lot of work in is satellite. So we do a lot of satellite imagery, even drone imagery. And as we take that imagery, we analyze that for farms and regions in order to produce reports. I think we have 23 reports that we generate that help assess how the crops are doing year over year. What are the differences? What are the moisture levels? What are the nutrient levels? And we can access data on some nutrients via satellite, and start picking out telltale indicators that help the farmer using that satellite data. So that's a second piece that we use machine learning in. And then the third big piece that we use it in right now is deforestation. There's some new regulations coming into Europe. They are actually going live this year. So we have what may be the first deforestation-free shipment going from Peru to Germany. And so with that, we actually take satellite data and look at a farm over time. And as we look at that farm, we look at the removal of trees, and does that qualify or classify as deforestation? If it classifies as deforestation under the new regulations in Europe, that farmer can no longer sell to Europe if that deforestation took place after December 2020. And so with the tool, we can do the analysis and provide the farmer with a certificate to show that they are running their farm sustainably, especially from a deforestation perspective. There's some other regulations that we have to capture, and give them a certificate showing that their farm is deforestation free. They put that with their export documentation so that they can sell to Europe. And in a lot of the areas where we work, coffee and cocoa, you get a premium price if you're selling to Europe. If you are growing a quality product, you're meeting certain regulatory standards, you can make more money selling to the EU than you might be able to sell in your domestic market. So it helps the farmer increase their revenue or preserve a premium revenue. So those are really the three big AI areas that we're working in. We've got a large AI team that's constantly working on new reports and trying to innovate in the agriculture space from an AI perspective.
So, if in terms of numbers, how has the last year looked for you guys? And also, what I understand, a lot of what you guys do is impact based, does generate revenues for farmers. So, in terms of your own numbers, of course, that is something that I would love to know. And what sort of an impact has Demetra generated if we talk numbers? And you very well mentioned that you're working with a lot of developing regions or cities or countries. So, in terms of the adoption angle, how has it impacted farmers or their revenues versus your own? If you could please talk about that.
Yeah, so I guess at a Demetra level, in August of 2022, we launched our connected coffee platform. That was our real first platform. We did a project in Indonesia, and the project was a great project helping them get their product through to a European market where they get a premium price point and have the traceability records that they need. That initial project was about 3,500 farms in Sumatra, and it was a very exciting project. And in December, we wrapped up that pilot and went live with them and continued to grow. We also started marketing to others throughout 2023. We've brought on about 30 cooperatives and governments, and those are all over the world, in Kenya and Indonesia and India and Nepal, and then 4 or 5 countries in Latin America. Our growth has been great. We have lots of opportunity for growth. One of the biggest challenges we have is onboarding and how do we train farmers. Many of our farmers don't necessarily have a lot of experience with computer systems or cell phones. So there is a training component that has to take place. So we've probably signed up 20 or 30 cooperatives and governments just in this last year. We're onboarding about 18 of those, and we've got continued onboarding plans. We're adding a new department within the organization to continue onboarding. Those contracts exceed 500,000 farmers, and actually at a greater piece, we've signed deals with these cooperatives for up to about 20 million farmers. And 20 million farmers will not come on to the application. Not every farmer within a cooperative will choose to use the application. Sometimes just from a fear perspective, they don't know what to expect, or maybe they're waiting to hear what others within their cooperative, what successes they have. And then there is a cost component. We have well over 100,000 people on the platform using it right now, and we expect this year to probably triple or quadruple that from an onboarding perspective. And we're hoping to sign another 25 or 30 cooperatives and governments this year. So pretty astronomical opportunity from a growth perspective. And we're adding to our team, and as we train people and they come up to speed, they can go off and support projects on their own using the Demetra philosophy and methodology. So we're always looking for new partners to come in. We have a little bit of a model where in country, we always like to have an in-country partner. So those sales and operations partners will work with the local governments, work with the local NGOs, and work with those cooperatives in order to facilitate a deal. And then we'll start the training cycle with them. So we're looking for them to have people that can help us with that training. The other component of training that we do is using local universities. So in a number of areas, we'll sign a deal with a local university, get some students out of the agriculture program or the IT programs, and they'll go to the field. In Sumatra, for example, we did a project with Andalas University, which was great. We worked with Andalas and got a grant for them in order to fund training with the students from the government there. And they gave us 30 students who went to the field for 30 days and spent that working hand in hand with the farmers and the different members of the supply chain, drying stations and processing, in order to make sure everybody knew how to use the system and build a good base of users who could continue to support as we grow in that region. So a local farmer can, find somebody close by in their village that knows how to use the system and just walk over if they want to work on adoption. Hope that
Wow.
answers your question.
Yeah, it does. In fact, it's great to know that farmers or people who sort of adopt this tech and might be a little uncomfortable initially are helped and handheld throughout the process, like you mentioned. So great to hear that. But I'm sure that in quite a few regions, there would be regulatory concerns or compliances that would be compliance frameworks that would be in place. Have you personally at Demetra faced any problems with that? And if at all, I'm sure there are data collection rules or regulations in place in different developing countries that you mentioned about. Have you had any troubles with that, or how has your boat sailed when it came to compliance and regulation in all of these different parts of the world?
So I don't know that the issues have been problems. They're expected. So when you go into an area, there are different rules. So, when we've worked in different countries in Africa, they want the data stored in the cloud. So we have to make decisions about architecture because they don't want the data to leave their country. So we build an architectural framework in order to make that work, and have to make some decisions around what we record to the blockchain. We're working on a project right now in Peru and Colombia with an organization in Europe. So GDPR compliance is important, and certain data that might be transparent on a typical blockchain, we have to double encrypt it in order to make sure that it's not transparent. And if the farmer decides to opt out, their information is their own, and we can remove them or protect that data. So some data stays in a traditional cloud format, while other data is on the blockchain. And those decisions, we'll always have those. We're working through regulatory compliance right now with a couple countries on deforestation. The EU deforestation rules say that the farm must also comply with their local rules and not just the EU rules. So we have to build customization in order to perhaps bring on some certification programs. In Brazil is a good example, where they have rules around forest on mountains and on rivers that need to be protected differently. The EU rules don't go to that level of refinement because the EU has said you must comply with local laws, the system has to work on complying with those local laws. And that's a big differentiator between our system. A lot of the new EU systems in the world don't consider the local laws. They're just telling the user if deforestation has taken place without a consideration for local laws. I believe we're the only one in the market right now that considers that at a country level.
All right, interesting. So, integrating blockchain with ag tech, I'm sure, has been a big task. You already mentioned that there are a few things that only Demetra is doing in the market or are doing differently. But how is competition looking like? Are there firms who are maybe trying to do similar, if not the exact same work? And if you look at the industry at large, how is it going to look in the next 5 years or so?
So technology in agriculture is growing by leaps and bounds. Agriculture may be one of the late comers to
Mhm.
technology. There's a lot of combination of AI and blockchain and IoT. IoT sensors can produce great data sets for analysis to help a farmer. So being able to integrate those is key to success. There's not a lot of players in the agricultural space focused on agriculture within blockchain. So the blockchain industry is small from that perspective. Um, Most of the players in blockchain who focus on that focus on track and trace. And track and trace is important, knowing the origin of the goods. It's important from a regulatory perspective, from a food safety and food security perspective, that you can trace back to the origin. And then there's a smaller set that focuses on the end-to-end supply chain. So they focus at the farm, but all the steps in between. So how do you manage lot control from a coffee farm, for example, to a buyer, to a drying station, to a processor, and then to that roaster? Um, so there are a number of people trying to improve these activities and help manage those activities. 5 years from now, I see huge growth, probably across dozens or hundreds of companies. Um, from a competition perspective, we have a full end-to-end traceability suite. We've got the regulatory piece, we've got the agronomy piece, we've got the satellite piece, and we're adding more and more. And so being early to the space, we've done a lot of development, and that development gives us a competitive advantage to an extent in certain areas. We've got 18 languages in the system already and are working in countries around the world. So somebody new to the space needs to have that investment. We've been building with a team between 50 and 150 people for 2 years now. So, 100 plus person years of development has built a lot of functionality. So the startups who are coming in tend to pick a niche, and they tend to get good at that niche, and then they look at expansion or acquisition, how they deliver some of that other functionality. It's difficult to put that many hundreds of thousands of hours or even millions of hours into dev
Yeah.
when you're starting
No, that does sum it up. You're already working with quite a few countries, but if you have to look at some of the emerging geographies in terms of where the combination of blockchain, agtech, AI, and ML would work out very well in the coming few years, what would they be? And are you also maybe eyeing a few countries or geographies where maybe Dimitra would want to expand, or where you can benefit maybe mutually? In terms of propagating the tech as well as um, farmers gaining advantage from the tech. So, are
well,
there?
certainly we look at all the big geographies, but we are opportunistic. So we India is great, very large population associated with agriculture, technology savvy, from a training perspective. Connectivity across India is higher than many nations, and people have been working with cell phones for a longer period of time. So a great opportunity to work there. Other large geographies, we're in Indonesia, big population again. Brazil, we're not working in China yet. So we look at large geographies, we look at those different factors, what percentage is agriculturally focused, what's the connectivity look like. Connectivity is a big issue for us in some places. We have an offline version of our platform. So a farmer has to go walk into the village to get connectivity, download the platform, and then go use it at home on the farm. And then they don't get connectivity again until they go into the village. So they could have days or weeks between performing an activity and then having that activity written to the database or written to the blockchain, depending on the type of transaction. And then a lot of our decisions are how easy are the governments to work with. Some governments only want local companies. We've incorporated in many countries in order to set up a local presence, where in others we partner with somebody and they have a corporation. And then, we've always got a pipeline of 100 or more potential opportunities that our sales team is working on. And so a lot of our decisions really come down to the profitability of those potential contracts. Some organizations don't necessarily have the budget, and we will work with those organizations to go and help and find an NGO or somebody to help fund them. But in the end, the project at least has to break even for it to make sense for us. And then there's a lot of people out there selling their products, so we don't win them all. A lot of our decision making is based on what we win when we put a bid in. Government contracts are almost always going through an RFP process. That RFP process is regimented, and they typically go to the lowest price or whatever their value equation is. So we have to be able to compete from that perspective and produce the most value for the least amount of money in order to win a government contract. The great thing with government contracts is they bring us, hundreds of thousands and even in some cases millions of users.
Okay. Interesting. So we're almost at the end of our time, but before we wrap this episode up, what are your expectations from this year in terms of sectoral growth, in terms of the growth that you're expecting from Demetra, as well as expansion or adoption for blockchain tech in general? What are your key expectations from the sector at large, Jon?
So there's a couple. We're going to continue growth with the traditional product that we've had for the last 2 years, and we'll bring on another 25 cooperatives or so around the world. We just signed up one with Lima Naru in Ethiopia. They have 50,000 members in their cooperative. So cooperatives can add millions of people. We've signed, I think, 4 deals in Ethiopia in the last month, and we have a couple more coming, and that'll create a total of about 500,000 users. We've got similar opportunities in Latin America and Asia, so lots of growth there. We've added some new products in the last year. So back in I guess September, October, we kicked off a new program in Kenya with a group called 1 Million Avocados, and we have designed the ability for people to invest in trees and help a farmer with a tree and take co-ownership of a tree. So in this case, it's avocado trees. Avocado farmers in Kenya somewhat have a difficult time getting capital. So you can go on and get a land evaluation for a farm to see that the land is suitable to grow avocados in this case. And then we've planted over 1,000 trees right now that we've sponsored. And those individual trees are for sale as an NFT. So you get a real live tree with real live geo coordinates that you can monitor on Google Earth as it grows. You get reports every year on how your tree is doing. And as the tree starts to produce fruit, you get a percentage of the revenue coming off of that tree. So, for $50, you can buy an avocado tree, and in a few years, you're starting to make a little bit money, and you're helping a farmer in need. So we
Yeah.
have a complete donation program where you can buy a tree if you're not interested in the revenue, but you really just want to help a
Okay.
farm, and buy a tree for them or a group of trees. This program, we're hoping to do over 1 million trees. And so it's in pilot mode right now. Our partner and I we're working with the regulatory body in Kenya to set up some structures for this. And this, from an adoption perspective, has been huge. We've just signed a contract with the government of Roraima, which is a state in Brazil. So they're going to do the same thing with cacao and acai and some citrus trees. And again, we're working through the regulatory in Brazil in order to make sure that we can comply there. But it's been great. We've got 3 large government organizations that are on board. They've got an objective to allow investors to take part in agriculture. And we've built the soil analysis, the NFT platform, and all the automation in order to make this happen. We just have to work through in each area the regulatory and the economics. So we see that as a big opportunity for us. The users will buy in DMTR, and if they don't, they get a discount if they buy in DMTR. And if they're not comfortable to buy in DMTR, they will buy in whatever their local currency. And we manage on ramps and off ramps in order to make that happen. So everything is converted back to DMTR for the user. So we see a lot of growth there. We see Kenya being huge, Brazil being huge. We're planning some projects now in Indonesia to help with funding farmers, and we'll be looking at a number of other countries in the coming year. So more Web3, more blockchain, depending on how they want to manage it. In some cases, they'll be white labeling the Demetra system in order to use their own local government credentials and marketing. And in some cases, it'll be just live right on the Demetra platform. But it all ties back to the token. So we see huge growth there on top of deforestation, 24 laws coming. Everybody who's shipping 7 commodities to Europe must be using a platform by December. And they also need to be using a platform for any inventory that's going to carry over into 2025. So, we have people who are shipping coffee next month that the coffee may sit in a warehouse for a while, sit on a boat for a while, and some of it will remain in 2025. And depending on the quantity of that coffee, they have to have those deforestation certificates now. But January 1st, 2025, 100% of shipments on those 7 commodities must be deforestation free in the EU. And we have a great platform for that with some unique features. So we see, as the year goes on, a lot of demand for that product. We see it shaping up in the sales cycle already. More and more people generating interest and reaching out to us. And as the number of leads go up and the number of contracts go up, we'll see a lot of users who aren't necessarily users of the entire Demetra platform. They're looking for a certificate, and that certificate is going to cost a certain amount of money in DMTR and is mandatory by law. They can't operate their business without it now. So those are the big areas of growth for us, and we look forward to a fruitful 2024 and working to onboard all of these different user groups in Europe and around the world, supplying Europe.
Definitely a lot of opportunities, hopefully more and more demand, and like you said, more blockchain, more AI, Web3, machine learning, and most likely more empowerment to the farmers out there through Demetra and these technologies. Thank you so much, Jon, for decoding AgTech so well for me, and of course our viewers today. It was my pleasure to interview you here on Voice of Crypto. You're doing some amazing work, and I wish you all the very best with all of that at Demetra.
Thank you for having us here. We're really pleased to join you, and I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Absolutely, and hopefully you're able to be the flag bearer of blockchain tech in AgTech here in India as well. Any help needed, do let me know.
We do some work in India already, and it is a
Wow.
huge farming nation. So we're excited to do more there. And thank you for your offer. We'll take you up on that.
Absolutely, and all the very best. Thank you so much
Take
once
care.
again.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We'll see you next time with another interesting guest. And until then, bye bye. Have a great day.